The primary purpose of operating a business is to generate profits. A business engaged in merchandising needs to establish a regular selling price, which we denote as the letter S. The regular selling price must cover the cost of buying the goods, the operating expenses or overhead of the business, and finally the desired profit required by the owner to stay in business. This can all be summarized in the following formula, where your regular selling price is equal to the cost of buying plus the expenses plus the net profit. Now, if you take a look at this formula, we've assigned letters for each of these things. S for regular selling price, C for the cost, E for expenses, and P for profit. And you'll notice that expenses and net profit can be grouped together as what we call markup. Let's talk a little bit about markup. So notice that I've written that M is the letter for markup, and it represents the sum of the expenses and the net profit, or M is equal to E plus P. I want you to think of markup as the total amount you add to your cost, not just to make a profit, but also to cover all expenses it takes to run your business. So you're not just marking up the selling price to make a profit, but also to survive and thrive. Now we can substitute this variable M back into the formula, and if we do, it ends up becoming S is equal to C plus M. Or in other words, the regular selling price is equal to the cost of buying plus the markup. Depending on the situation, you may use this formula or the other one involving expenses. Now markup can also be represented as a rate. For example, we can represent markup as a percent of cost. That is, your cost C acts as the base and your markup acts as the portion. If you recall the formula, B times R is equal to P, where B represents the base, R represents the rate, and when you multiply those two, you get a portion. So when the markup is based on the cost, your base value is the cost, your rate will be R, but since it's based on cost, we write down R sub C for reference, and your portion here is the markup. So multiplying these two, C and R, gives you a markup based on cost. When your markup is based on selling price, your base value is your selling price, your rate will be represented as R sub S, and together multiplying those out gives us our markup based on the selling price. And with that being said, let's take a look at some basic problems involving markup. This is a multi-step process, and here's the information that's been provided. We're told that the cost is $72, the selling price is $96, and the expense, take a look, is 15% of the selling price. Or in other words, we're taking whatever the selling price is, multiplying it by 15%, and that represents our expense. Question A asks, find the amount of markup M. Now remember, there are multiple ways that we can represent markup. And one of those ways is by using the formula S is equal to the cost plus the markup M. Now we already know the selling price, it's $96. And the cost is given in the question as $72. So all we have to do is rearrange this formula for M and we get our answer. If we take this term over to the other side and subtract, we end up getting 24. So $24 is the markup in this particular problem. In question B, find the amount of overhead. If you take a look back at what we were provided, we were told that the expense is equal to 15% of the selling price. So to find our overhead, we simply take 15% or 0.15 as a decimal, and we multiply it to the selling price of $96. And together, when we multiply these out, we end up finding that the expenses were $14.40. That was easy enough. Let's move on to question C. Find the profit or loss P realized on the sale. Now recall that to find the profit, we can use the formula S is equal to your cost plus your expenses plus your profit. And we can rearrange for P by bringing C and E over to the left side. And remember, we have S, C, and E, so this will work. S take away C take away E is equal to P. Now that's one way to calculate profit. The other way to calculate profit is by looking at the footnote of this question. It says markup, M, is equal to our expense plus our profit. If we rearrange for P in this formula, we end up getting M take away E is equal to P. So either of these formulas can be used to find your profit. I'll go ahead and use the purple one for simplicity. So our markup we found to be $24. So I'll write down 24, take away our expenses of $14.40, and together if we subtract those, we end up with our profit. If you do subtract them, you end up with 9.6, or $9.60 is our profit. Notice that the output is positive. That means we are generating a profit. If our output was negative, then that is a loss. Moving on to question D, calculate the rate of markup based on cost. So it's particularly important that you read these carefully because we are looking for the rate of markup based on cost. So we're looking for R sub C. To find the rate of markup, we'll use the formula C times R sub C is equal to our markup. Remember, this is no different than using your cost as your base and your markup as your portion. We know our markup to be $24. So we'll substitute that in for M. Our cost, according to the question, is $72. And we're looking for R sub C. So we can rearrange this by dividing both sides by 72. That leads us to 24 over 72. And since we are looking for a rate, we should multiply the output by a factor of 100, or in other words, 100%. So we'll take 24 divided by 72. We'll multiply that by 100. And writing this to two decimal places should give us roughly 33.33%. Now, if you want, you can write this in exact form as a fraction as well. So changing this into a mixed number fraction, we get 33 and a third percent exactly. So that is the rate of markup based on the cost. Question E asks, calculate the rate of markup based on the selling price. So this time our base values are selling price, our rate of markup will be represented as R sub S, and our markup will be represented by M. Replacing M with 24 and S with 96. And using the same algebraic approach as before, R sub S is equal to 24 divided by 96 multiplied by 100%. So in our calculator, 24 divided by 96 times 100%, or a factor of 100, and we end up getting 25%. So the rate of markup based on the selling price is 25%. If you have any further questions about what you just learned, please use the comment section below. I'll gladly give you a hand. Thanks for watching.